where we blend ancient wisdom from the East with modern science from the West to help you thrive after 60. Today's episode might just save your life, because every year, hundreds of thousands of seniors experience strokes, many without warning, many without ever seeing it coming. But what if the first signs were hiding in plain sight? And what if certain everyday morning habits, things you've done for years, were quietly tripling your stroke risk? Well, joining me again today is someone who's been sounding the alarm on this for decades. He's over 100 years old, still sharp, still practicing, and he's here to share what every senior must know before it's too late. Dr. Hinohara, welcome back.
Thank you, John. It's always an honor. And yes, this is one of the most urgent messages I give my patients over 60. Strokes do not come out of nowhere. The signs are there, the causes are there, and with the right awareness, they can be prevented. But the clock starts early, often first thing in the morning.
That really gives me pause, because when we think about strokes, we imagine something dramatic, a collapse, a slurred sentence, a frozen face. But what you're saying is, the real warning signs often come quietly, and they show up when we least expect them, brushing our teeth, tying our shoes, pouring that first cup of coffee. So let's get right into it.
Exactly. That's why this conversation matters, because it's not just about emergencies. It's about the tiny clues that come first, the little signals your body sends before a stroke ever happens. In this episode, we're going to talk about those first signs, the ones most people miss. We're also going to walk through the worst morning habits I see in seniors that silently raise stroke risk, some of which might surprise you, and I'll tell you right now, the final two are the most dangerous and the most overlooked. So if you're over 60 or love someone who is, I urge you stay with us until the end. Because this isn't just about prevention, it's about protection. And every single change we talk about today could make the difference between a normal morning and a life-changing event.
So then, Dr. Hinohara, what's the very first sign you tell your patients to watch for?
It's not pain, it's not dizziness. It's something far more subtle and far more dangerous because of it. The first real sign of a stroke for many seniors is a sudden shift in coordination. You reach for your toothbrush and your hand doesn't land where it should. You go to sip your tea and it dribbles slightly. You try to button a shirt and your fingers just feel off, not paralyzed, not numb, just wrong. These aren't dramatic symptoms. That's why they get ignored, but they are neurological. Your brain is responsible for every smooth movement. So when something feels clumsy, lagging, or uncoordinated, that's not aging. That's a potential blood flow interruption.
Have you ever experienced this with one of your patients?
I had a patient once, 74 years old, retired accountant, very sharp. He came in not because he was sick, but because he said, "I've been dropping my keys more often. My wife noticed I've been fumbling with buttons. I thought maybe it was arthritis." But I asked more questions. He'd also had a moment a few days prior where he tried to write a grocery list and forgot how to spell milk. Just blanked, no headache, no slurring, but something was wrong. We ran a scan and found he had experienced a small TIA earlier that week. The next 48 hours were critical. We adjusted his medication, cleaned up his diet, monitored his pressure and hydration. He never had a full stroke because we caught the warning.
And that's the key, isn't it? Catching it before it becomes irreversible.
Exactly. A study published in the Lancet Neurology followed patients after TIAs and found that the first 48 hours were the highest risk window. If a patient received treatment during that time, the risk of a major stroke dropped by more than 80%. That's how fast you have to act and how fast you can change the outcome.
That's incredibly sobering and empowering, because that means awareness, just noticing something's off, can literally save your brain.
Yes, but only if you know what to look for and when.
Let's talk about that when, because you've said before, The most dangerous time for stroke isn't in the middle of a stressful day. It's actually first thing in the morning. Why is that?
Because your brain wakes up before you do. And for most people over 60, that first hour after opening your eyes is when your body is most vulnerable. Here's why. Overnight, your body becomes dehydrated. You haven't had water in 6 to 8 hours. Your blood thickens slightly. Your cortisol, the stress hormone, spikes sharply at dawn. And for many seniors, blood pressure follows. That creates a perfect storm. Thick blood, tight vessels, and a surge in pressure through aging arteries. Add to that the way most people start their day, fast, distracted, with the wrong habits. And you've created an environment where stroke risk quietly triples.
Let's get into those habits, because I know some of them will sound familiar to a lot of listeners. And that's the point, isn't it?
Yes, these are common, cultural, even convenient. But after 60, convenience can be costly, and the first one is the most overlooked of all, skipping water. Most seniors wake up and head straight for coffee. Maybe they brush their teeth, check their phone, pour a cup, and start the day. But they don't drink any water. And that's a mistake, one of the biggest. Because after 8 hours of sleep, your blood is like a sponge with no water in it. That increases the viscosity, the thickness of your blood, and thick blood moves slower, clots easier, and stresses the heart and brain. One study from the European Journal of Neurology found that low morning hydration was a contributing factor in 48% of first-time ischemic strokes. Nearly half. Not genetics, not diet, just dehydration.
So what's your advice? What should someone do the moment they wake up?
Before anything else, water, room temperature or warm, not ice cold, 1 full glass. Before the coffee, before the pills, before the news. You are rehydrating your brain, not just your mouth.
That hits me harder than I expected, because I think about how many mornings I've started with coffee and nothing else. No water, no pause, just straight into caffeine and cortisol. And I know I'm not alone in that.
You're not. It's what most people do. But your brain doesn't want stimulation first. It wants circulation. And that doesn't start with the coffee. It starts with hydration.
It makes so much sense. And what I appreciate about your approach is that it's not about fear. It's about function. You're showing us how to help the brain do what it's already trying to do.
Exactly. The body wants to heal. The brain wants to flow. We just have to stop interrupting it.
All right, let's move on. What's the second morning habit that raises stroke risk after 60?
The second habit is something almost nobody talks about. But I see it all the time in my older patients. It's sitting too long in bed before moving, staying seated, scrolling your phone, or just staying still for 20-30 minutes without circulation. After 60, your blood vessels are less elastic. If you go from hours of lying down to just sitting motionless, especially without movement, blood pools in the lower body. That slows return to the heart. It reduces brain perfusion, and for someone with plaque or clot risk, it can be the trigger.
That's unexpected, because we think of lounging in bed as restful. But what you're saying is, it's a vascular bottleneck?
Exactly. The heart has to work harder to recirculate blood that's been pooling, and if blood pressure surges, or if a clot has formed in a leg, those first movements can send it upward. I've seen strokes happen in the bathroom because people went from lying to straining without a proper transition.
So what's the safer alternative?
Wake up slowly, but move early. Do ankle rolls while still lying down. Flex your toes. Then, when you sit up, do shoulder circles, neck rolls. Stand up gently. This gets blood moving upward again, safely, gradually. Even 2 minutes of gentle movement can prime the body for a much safer morning.
That's such a simple shift. And again, not scary, just smarter.
That's what longevity really is. Small moments, big impact.
Let's talk about habit number 3, because I know this next one affects nearly everyone I know, especially retirees.
Yes. The third habit that raises stroke risk after 60 is skipping breakfast. And I don't mean a big breakfast. I mean any breakfast. Too many older adults wake up, drink coffee, take medications, and eat nothing. They say they are not hungry, or they're trying to intermittent fast. But after 60, that can be risky, especially for the brain.
Why is that? I thought fasting was supposed to be healthy.
Fasting has benefits in younger bodies, with stable blood sugar and strong hormonal rhythm. But after 60, the body becomes more vulnerable to hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. And when that happens, the brain suffers first. The brain runs on glucose. It doesn't store much. So if you're already dehydrated and then you don't eat, you're creating the perfect storm for dizziness, mental fog, or worse, a vascular event, especially if you're on blood pressure or diabetes medication.
That's a critical point, because I know a lot of seniors, myself included, who take pills in the morning and don't eat for hours.
That's one of the most dangerous combinations. Many stroke cases I've seen in patients over 65 involved skipped meals, plus medication, plus stress. Instead, I recommend a small, protein-rich breakfast. It doesn't need to be big. Half a boiled egg, a spoon of yogurt, a few soaked walnuts, just enough to stabilize blood sugar and tell your brain you're supported.
That's a shift we can all make, and it's doable, even if you don't have much of an appetite.
Exactly. It's not about appetite. It's about circulation, stability, and rhythm.
That one really hits home, because for years I thought skipping breakfast was a form of discipline. I'd even feel proud about it, like I was doing something healthy. But now I see it's not discipline. It's denying the brain exactly what it needs at the exact moment it needs it most.
You are not alone, John. Many seniors, especially men, see breakfast as optional. But after 60, nothing is optional when it comes to circulation. And that brings us to habit number 4, rushing into stress. I can see in your face you are wondering what that means.
Tell me.
It means checking the news before your feet hit the floor, reading emails at the breakfast table, arguing with your spouse about the day's schedule before you've even had water. This is a problem because the brain, after sleep, is in a fragile state. It hasn't fully switched into cognitive gear yet. Your cortisol is already peaking. Your blood pressure is naturally rising. If you add mental strain to that moment, you amplify the physiological stress. A 2015 study published in the journal Stroke followed over 93,000 people for more than a decade. It found that individuals who experienced high psychological stress early in the day were significantly more likely to suffer a stroke, even when controlling for other risk factors like age, smoking, and blood pressure. And here's what's worse. The risk was highest in those over 60, and highest of all within the first 3 hours of waking. So when you wake up and reach for your phone, or dive into the day without creating space, you're stacking pressure on top of pressure in a body already on edge. Instead, create a buffer. 10 quiet minutes, stretching, a walk, even just sitting with your tea and being still. Give your brain a chance to stabilize before you load it with tasks. This is not luxury. It's neurological hygiene.
That study you mentioned, that really shook me. Because I used to think stress was just emotional, something you felt, maybe vented and moved on from. But hearing that it physically primes the body for a stroke, especially first thing in the morning, that changes how I think about every notification, every headline, every rushed conversation. And now we've come to it, the one we've all been waiting for. You said at the start of this episode that the last habit might be the most dangerous of all and the most ignored. So let's talk about it. What is the 5th morning habit that quietly increases stroke risk and still flies under the radar for so many seniors?
It's one word, but it's the foundation under all the others. Stillness, and not the peaceful kind. I'm talking about physical inactivity, waking up, and then spending the next hour or two sitting, on the bed, at the table, on the couch. No real movement, no circulation, just stillness.
That's something I think we're all guilty of, especially after retirement. You wake up, pour a cup of coffee, maybe read the paper. It feels normal. It even feels healthy, like you're easing into the day. But you're saying that stillness could actually be dangerous.
Yes, especially after 60, because your blood is already more prone to clotting. Your veins don't push blood upward as easily, and without movement, the vascular system slows. The legs become pooling zones, and that's where most clots begin. We've seen this for years in hospital settings. Post-surgical patients who stay sedentary are at sharply increased risk for deep vein thrombosis. But what many people don't realize is that same risk applies to everyday seniors. You may not be in a hospital bed, but if you're seated for long stretches right after waking, your body can't tell the difference.
That's sobering, because we associate danger with doing too much. But this is the opposite. It's the danger of doing nothing.
Exactly. A study published in Circulation tracked over 8,000 adults over 60. Those who spent more than 9 hours a day sedentary had double the stroke risk, even if they exercised later in the day. Why? Because it's not just about how much you move. It's when you move.
So the first hour after waking, that's the window?
That's the window. If you move early, you activate circulation. You tell your body the day has begun, but if you stay still, the body assumes it's still resting. And that stagnation, even if it feels harmless, becomes one of the strongest predictors of stroke later in life.
So what's the fix?
Nothing extreme, no treadmill, no sweating, just 5 to 10 minutes of light mobility. March in place, do shoulder rolls, stretch your arms overhead, walk to the mailbox, tell your blood, it's time to flow. Because when blood flows, the brain thrives. And when the brain thrives, the whole body follows.
That brings everything full circle. Because we started this episode talking about strokes, something most people think of as sudden. But what you've shown us, Dr. Hinohara, is the warning signs and the risk factors. They build quietly, and they start in the smallest, most ordinary parts of our day. How we move, what we skip, how we start our mornings.
Exactly. Health after 60 is not about dramatic change. It's about consistent awareness. The brain is not asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to pay attention.
And that's what I hope everyone listening today will take away. You don't need a new supplement. You don't need a new gadget. You just need to stop ignoring what your body's been trying to tell you all along. Dr. Hinohara, final word goes to you. If you could leave our listeners with one last line, what would it be?
Like, subscribe, and see you next time.